You're listening to the Barcode Podcast with your host, Chris Glandon, serving cybersecurity straight up with no chaser. Let's hit the bar and grab a drink.
Oh, hey, man, you must be new. Is Tony around?
Hey, Chris, right? You said you would be around this time. Well, welcome to the digital arena. This security guy stopped in about an hour ago and set up a chessboard at that table over there. Tony has been getting burnt ever since. Won't give up, though. He's persistent, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, since I'm in security also, you do realize that protecting your organization from cyber attackers is similar to protecting your king from enemy attacks in a game of chess. Strategy is everything, man.
I'm more of a shoots and ladders kind of guy, Chris.
Well, check it out, man. It's really basic. There's a hierarchy of chess pieces. Pawns, the least powerful piece, are at the bottom. They outnumber everyone, but they have limited capabilities. The king is the piece that decides the end of the game. It reigns supreme all the way at the top. The ultimate objective of a chess match is to protect the king. In security, it's the same. IT security teams must work from the top down. Know where your king, aka your critical assets, are located, and then prioritize the security of the organization's most privileged accounts and credentials, which are the entry points to critical systems and information. Then you move down the chain of priorities.
Wow, I can see how chess and cybersecurity actually have a lot in common.
Yeah, man, it's a methodical game. If you can control the front line with calculated moves, then your king, stays protected. Always know what the opponent is thinking and be 2 steps ahead, if you know what I'm saying.
For sure, I'm no rook. But hey, in the Barcode monarchy, we serve a drink also called the King. It's quick and easy to make, yet also powerful. It's 3 ounces of Crown Black, 4 ounces of cola, and 1 lime wedge. First, you add the Crown Black to an ice-filled highball glass, you pour in the cola, and you stir it. Then, if you want to, if you're feeling a little saucy, you garnish it with a lime.
Oh man, that's it. End game.
Enjoy. See you around next time, Chris.
I'm here with Graham Cluley, the iconic security blogger, keynote speaker, author, and podcaster. Graham has been involved in the security industry since the early 90s, beginning his official career as a programmer for a British AV firm and later recruited by Dr. Solomon himself to write the first ever version of Dr. Solomon's antivirus toolkit for Windows. He went on to hold senior roles at Sophos and McAfee, twice named Twitter User of the Year by Computer Weekly, InfoSecurity Europe Hall of Fame inductee, co-host of the popular Smashing Security podcast, although his claim to fame is that he originated the phrase we have all heard at least once, the cloud is just someone else's computer. Graham, thank you for joining me and welcome to Barcode.
Hi there. Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me on. That cloud is, just someone else's computer. There are people selling T-shirts with that on and stickers and things. And I'm thinking, where's Micah? I don't know for sure that I was the first to see it, but I can't find any earlier reference because I remember saying it to a journalist and it was published in a magazine. And I haven't seen it cited anywhere before that. So I think I may well have invented it. So I'm sorry about that for everyone who gets fed up hearing it. It's just a throwaway comment. It seems to become quite a meme.
No, that phrase really took off. It really took off. And it's a timeless quote because it's still relevant to this day.
It was just, I remember back then, everyone was sort of extolling the virtues of the cloud. Say, oh, well, there's this magical thing, this mystical cloud up in the air, which can store all your data. It'll be wonderfully secure. It's like, well, hang on a minute. There's nothing really that magical about it. It's just someone's computer, and that was how I sort of was thinking of it at the time. Not to say that there aren't huge advantages sometimes for some organizations for using the cloud, but just to realize what it actually is and the fact that it's been sort of given this grandiose name.
Yeah, take the mystique away from it, simplify it. And then from there you can, dig in. But I mean, I think on surface level, everybody needs to hear that, simplified meaning. And I think it's brilliant. So
it's a bit sad. That's the thing I'm remembered for, though, isn't it? That is what the achievement of my life.
Well, you have a long list that I'm not going to go into. I would have been talking throughout the whole hour on just, your accomplishments. But thank you, on behalf of the entire InfoSec community for keeping us all tuned in. You've become so influential for those within the industry. And I'm curious to know who influenced you or who did you follow along the way as you were carving out your legacy?
Probably the most influential person, as you mentioned in your preamble, when I was about 21, I got recruited by a security company based in the UK called S&S International, which was later renamed Dr. Solomon's. And there really was a Dr. Solomon. And he produced Britain's leading antivirus. He was basically the equivalent of John McAfee, but saying anyone's the equivalent of John McAfee these days isn't necessarily the greatest endorsement. But he was the antivirus guru of the United Kingdom, really knowledgeable and great with the media. And he explained what computer viruses were to people just as they're beginning to emerge. He was my boss. I was his Windows programmer, and I watched him and I saw how effectively he communicated sometimes quite complicated subjects, quite nerdy subjects at the time, like polymorphic viruses and master boot records and partition sectors and all this sort of thing, how he communicated these kind of things. And I guess I sort of thought, oh, that works quite well. And so I sort of followed in his footsteps, I suppose. He was probably the biggest influence on my professional career.
Interesting.
And over time, I stopped being a programmer. They pushed me more and more into talking about computer security instead. It's like, oh, Graham, rather than writing a bit of code today, can you stand on this stage and speak to our customers or speak at a conference? And I was like, oh, all right, I'll do that. And I've been kind of doing that in various places ever since.
Now, were you a natural public speaker?
It's very hard to sort of look at yourself like that. I'm naturally an introvert. And if you met me at a party, I probably wouldn't be very much fun at all. And I wouldn't want to draw too much attention with it takes me a while to get to know people, and then I feel more comfortable and I can relax a bit, and I don't mind making a bit more of a prat of myself. But I view presenting on stage as being a bit of an acting job, I suppose. It's you sort of put on a character and you tell some jokes. But there are techniques which you can use. And Alan Solomon was certainly a fantastic presenter. And there are other tremendous public speakers in the world of computer security. I'm thinking of people like Mika Hipponen, for instance, who's a top TED speaker and has had millions of people watching his videos online. And you begin to learn techniques and you think, well, I'll do a bit of that and I'll do a bit of this. I'll take a bit of that. And people find their own style. And my style is to be quite relaxed and hopefully a little bit humorous, have some fun along the way, but hopefully be informational as well. So I don't really know where it came from, but it's something. It's a niche which I feel fairly comfortable sitting in.
Yeah, I think you have to connect with your audience, which you do. It's very different than standing up reading a script.
I'm terrible with a script, and I really cannot do it. I find it very, very difficult to follow something like that because it makes me uncomfortable. I'm much happier winging it. Yeah, yeah. So I have had situations where I've done talks for companies and they said, okay, good. You're going to come next Thursday, give a talk. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. They said, oh, by the way, our legal department would just like to know what you're going to say in advance. And I'd be like, well, I don't know what I'm going to say. I have no idea what I'm going to talk. I can tell you the rough subject matter, but I can't give you a script. I would never have one of those.
Interesting. So yeah, you do cover a lot of ground. You speak on a number of different cybersecurity topics. Along with this goes trying to stay, very well informed and in tune with what's going on in cybersecurity. What do you see right now as the biggest challenge we as cybersecurity professionals are up against? And to what degree is COVID and the pandemic responsible for it.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the challenges we face, if you're working in an IT team trying to secure your business right now, one of the challenges is the sheer scale of the problem. There's so much malware. When I began writing antivirus software way back in the mists of time, there were 200 new pieces of malware being created each month. And and I remember journalists ringing us up and sort of saying, well, what are you going to do when there are 10,000 viruses in total? How will your antivirus software ever cope? Now, today, there's something like, is it 500,000 new individual pieces of malware discovered every day? There's something like 5 every second. Huge amounts of new malware constantly coming out, and there'll be another 500,000 tomorrow. Most of those, thankfully, your company will never see, but you don't know which ones you'll have to face next. So as an IT security professional, you have to handle this sort of tidal wave of new attacks constantly coming through. And of course, over time, it's become much more commercialized. The actual cybercrime has, because it's financially motivated now. And so there's a lot less artistry in the main as to what they're trying to do, but the rewards, the money they can make from hacking into your company, whether it be through a ransomware attack or business email compromise, which are two of the biggest threats at the moment. Those are the things I think companies should be worried about, probably more than state-sponsored attacks. I guess that's it. Ransomware, business email compromise, or maybe insider threat. Those are the three things which I think are the thing which should be giving you goosebumps. And you should be wondering, how could we possibly keep a lid on something like that and prevent it from becoming a big problem?
Agreed. And the amount of malware that you see is also a reflection of the continued financial gain for attackers as well. They see how ransomware being sent to these large organizations are continuously successful, and it just becomes more of an incentive for them.
And as you just mentioned, obviously we're living in this crazy time of a pandemic. Many people are working away from the office. Probably many of us will continue working away from the office, at least for part of the week, because I think there's been this sort of fundamental shift in the way people are likely to work. Not for everybody, obviously, but for some people, I think companies' eyes have been opened to this as a possibility. Hasn't been as maybe painful as we might have anticipated. But from the security point of view, you've got all those users at home, distracted by screaming kids and the dog and their partners, and they have links sent to them. And whereas in the past, you could whistle over to the guy in the IT team and say, hey, is it safe to click on this? Can I open this? Now you have to set up a Zoom call to discuss it with them, or ping them on a instant messaging system or something like that. I think people are more likely maybe to fall for some of these scams and click on links or run code because they don't want to bother the IT people. And there's so much more distraction maybe at home than there used to be in the office.
Yeah, and that's if they decide to ping someone, because that would be taking time from their day.
Yeah, and because most of the time it's safe, right? And so you eventually think, I'm bothering that guy in IT support. They must be fed up with me. So I think it's important for the guys in IT support to say, it doesn't matter. I would much rather you asked me beforehand rather than came to me later and went, something kind of weird. This skull has appeared on my screen and there's like dripping gore on the screen. I don't know, some sort of message about Bitcoin. They would much rather hear in advance. So I think it's important for us who are working in IT support not to sound frustrated, to thank people for contacting us, even when 9 times out of 10, it may not have been necessary and it was quite safe.
Yes. Yep. 100%. So I mentioned this before, but you really essentially run in parallel with the current state of security. I'm curious, what is the acronym that you hear the most of, or the one buzzword that you constantly hear these days that you want to buzzkill? Oh my goodness. What a question. See, I try and stay away from the acronyms because they annoy me so much. Exactly.
There are some phrases. I do think that there's an awful lot of. I do feel like in the IT security community, we do kind of block out other people by using too many buzzwords, and even things like 0 day. Sometimes, it can be over the top, and I was hearing someone the other day. They were talking about sassy and socks, and it's just like, really, do you have to use all these words all the time? Can we not just speak in zero trust? I think it's interesting because sometimes these things do seem to enter the regular parlance. I was actually thinking today, because there's a story going around about this huge pipeline in the United States, which has been shut down by Colonial Pipeline. It seems like the pipeline itself wasn't hacked, but the company who ran it were hacked and have been hit by ransomware. And so through an abundance of caution, there's a phrase for you, they've decided to shut down the pipeline as well for the time being. And obviously the word ransomware is appearing in the mainstream news. So there's something which has actually been adopted. And I think many people, many regular non-nerds now understand what ransomware is, rather like they understand what identity theft is. Whereas identity theft sounds like something from an episode of The X-Files or something, or from, the Twilight Zone, having your identity stolen. But now people accept that and understand it. So I think there's some hope for it. The acronyms, I think if you're having to use too many acronyms, you've kind of failed. And I think it's important sometimes to explain some of these things. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't want to sound like a Vorywogum, which of course is a voice of reason in a world gone mad. Because otherwise we could end up in a situation of Teotihuacan, couldn't we? Which is the end of the world as we know it.
I have one for you. How about NFT? So that's one that has hit headlines recently. And I'm curious to get your take on NFT or non-fungible token and its hype train. So is it all hype? Is this a buzzword that we should be paying attention to? And in terms of security, what does it mean for our industry?
I have no idea what it means. I've just done a podcast in the last week where my co-host brought up the subject of NFTs and tried to explain NFTs to me. And I think I'm still scratching my head trying to understand is this in any way good for the world? I'm not sure. Is this just something for Elon Musk to tweet about? I hear Dogecoin took a dive because he appeared on Saturday Night Live and described Dogecoin in non-flattering terms. I'm not sure. I mean, does it have any relevance to security? I don't know. You tell me. You probably know more about this than I do. But
well, it's unique digital assets validated via blockchain, which was a buzzword itself at one point, and many argue that it's still a useless buzzword. But I'm still trying to comprehend how these assets are valued. So if I go create a JPEG image of the pen that I'm holding, is it possible to go straight online and sell it for $1 million? I doubt it. It's still an emerging concept. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sold on it yet.
I think the thing is, Chris, you've always been capable of selling anything to anybody if they're mug enough to buy it. And maybe it makes it a little bit easier to convince someone to spend $500,000 on your biro or a photograph of your biro if you associate it with the magic letters NFT. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe in years to come, people will laugh at this podcast at our lack of understanding. But right now, I'm just not. See, this is my Chris. This is my problem. I'm a bit of an old fogey, and I don't like change too much. And I'm beginning. You know how you look at your parents and you think, how are they keeping up with technology? I think I might be becoming one of them. I think I might be struggling as well. I'm just saying, take me back to that simpler world.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. As advancements in tech and advanced threat actors start emerging, what should we as defenders be zoned in on right now? What do you see as the next major concern that's possibly on the horizon that we should all get in front of right now?
Well, I think it's difficult to predict. I mean, if I look back in the past, I don't think we would ever have imagined we ever got to the space where we are now. And there's some things which, I mean, for criminals, the truth is that if something works, they will keep on doing it. I mean, we're still seeing very elementary phishing attacks. And why are we seeing them? We're seeing them because they work. They exploit a human weakness, right? We aren't able to patch the bug in people's brains, which prevents them from clicking on a link in an HTML email and entering their password. So
True.
There are technologies which can help reduce the chances of that happening and maybe display warnings for people, but people still do that. So the criminals, this is actually one of the things I'm sort of a bit upset about is that we actually, in some ways, used to see much more innovation from the criminals than we do now. There was much more pride, I think, in the artistry of writing malware when it was a case of just showing off to your mates how clever you were, as opposed to what we see now, which is they're just churning them out, knowing that a small percentage of people might fall for them. So the attacks in some ways are actually less sophisticated. Now, it's not to say there aren't state-sponsored attacks and there aren't sometimes very, very clever attacks which exploit new vulnerabilities. Of course that happens. But most of the time, the actual attack is really, really simple. And so when people say to me, what's things going to be like in 5 or 10 years? It'll probably be a bit worse. There'll probably be more bad stuff out there. There'll be more people being scammed, but we won't have dealt with the fundamental problems because the fundamental problem is not a technological problem. The fundamental problem is actually a human problem, both a human problem in terms of us as victims being duped and tricked and scammed, and a human problem in so much as there are people out there who are prepared to be the scammers and the dupers and the criminals. And I don't know how we're going to fix that problem very easily because the internet makes it remarkably easy to cover your tracks. And if you're not stupid, thankfully some cyber criminals are, but if you're not stupid, the chances of you getting caught are fairly small. You can get away with a lot of this stuff, it seems. So I would say, if I was speaking to companies about what to worry about right now, I would say you need to worry about the threats of ransomware, business email compromise. You need to worry about identity theft. You need to worry about authentication. Are you properly authenticating your users? Have they only got access to the things which they need to access? Are you properly encrypting your sensitive data, not leaving it lying around in plain text? Things like that. And even just simple things like password. We all know what safe password practices are. Have a unique password, not one that's easy to crack. Don't reuse it in different places. But so many people do. And that's sort of at the heart of the fundamental problem here, which is the scammers are able to exploit those weaknesses.
I see. So you're saying the future of cybersecurity threats are really the same core vulnerabilities as we know them today, only morphed into a different appearance.
Yeah. And sometimes they don't even appear different. But, there will be the equivalent to phishing scams, I would expect, in the year 2500, right? It may not be an email. It may be a hologram appearing in front of you of someone who appears to be from the IT department asking you to confirm your password.
Yeah.
And, and you give it to them because only the IT guy appears in a hologram, and he's wearing the right badge and I recognize him. And and then there's terrifying stuff, which is terrifying for so many reasons, more than just computer security, like deepfake technology and what that's going to do to society and our ability to discern what is truth and what isn't. But yeah, I think that's more than a cybersecurity problem. I think that's a problem for all of us in all of our lives. There's a scary thing. Don't know what the solution is to that one.
Deepfakes worry me specifically. And it's not only video deepfakes, there's audio deepfakes. And I read that your voice may have been deepfaked at one time.
The problem is that when you record a podcast with a co-host, they then end up with hundreds of hours of your voice. And from what we're told, technology these days only needs about a minute. And they can replicate your voice to an extraordinary degree. And these tools are increasingly going to be accessible to everybody. You will be able to get apps, maybe you already can, where you just feed in a few photos or a section of audio and get it to say whatever you like. That is coming if it isn't here already. And you could be saying anything. I mean, we saw a situation 2 US elections ago where, the chap who ended up becoming US president was recorded on a bus saying something rather unsavory. Didn't see him, you just heard his voice. And he ended up going on TV before election, apologizing for it. And then within months, he was saying, "Oh, that wasn't me, that was faked." Now, with deep fake technology, that argument of his becomes so much more plausible that maybe it wasn't him.
Maybe it wasn't him.
Yeah. So
now, what happens in the situation where you do something that you shouldn't have been doing,
right?
And you blame it on deepfake?
Yeah, totally. It's given us free reign to be very naughty, isn't it? I can say to my wife, it wasn't me, darling. No. Even though you've got the photographs taken by the private investigator, this is clearly all photoshopped, or it's, the video is not of me, and it's horrendous. What are we going to have to do?
What about deepfake detection methods? Is that a technology you see evolving anytime soon?
Well, there are some companies who say that they're working on detection technology and are able to tell if a video is likely to be deepfaked. And I imagine they're doing it for audio as well. I imagine there's some very clever mathematics in there. But as the deepfaking technology gets better and leaves less artifacts and less clues, well, it becomes an arms race again, doesn't it? Of one side versus the other, and one side trying to get past the other. So, and at a certain point, it stops actually mattering, because if you have an outrageous video, for instance, of someone in the public eye doing something outrageous, if you post that up on Facebook or Twitter or wherever, it's spread around the world in seconds. And even if you come back an hour later and say that was deepfaked and here's our proof, chances are that denial and that rebuttal will never be seen by everyone who saw the original video. So the damage has been done. And
it's too late.
I think we just shut down all the social media networks, shouldn't we? Isn't that the answer?
You got my vote. You got my vote on that.
But the podcasts.
Good luck convincing everyone else. I have a hard time convincing people not to post personal information on Facebook, and now we're getting into privacy, but it's like with some people there's just no hope in that.
Yeah, and people think that they're helping each other. There is a temptation to retweet or reshare without even looking at something. People will share articles without reading the actual content of the article. They're just based upon their own opinions and their milieu. They will share based upon the headline. I don't have a Facebook account because I just think it's vile, but that's not to say that other social media networks aren't equally vile and have unpleasantness on them as well. So
I know one resource that you can go give valuable information, and that's your blog.
Oh, come on.
You write your own content. So let us know where our listeners can go find you online. You have your grahamclulley.com blog. What other resources could you let our listeners know to check you out? What's the link for the podcast? Is everything linked from your website, I guess?
Yeah, everything's linked from my website. So I hang out at grahamclulley.com, and I'm writing up there about things which I find interesting. I also have a podcast I co-host with my colleague Carole Theriault, where we have special guests on. We've had all sorts of people from the cybersecurity industry, but also people like Garry Kasparov, the former, greatest chess player who ever lived, and people who used to be in TV sitcoms, all sorts of things we have on, talking about cybersecurity and IoT. And that podcast is called Smashing Security. Find it in your favorite podcast app. And if you're a real glutton for punishment, I am on Twitter, where I hang out at gclulley, GCLULEY.
Very cool. And you play chess as well, right?
Oh, yeah. I love chess. Okay. I'm obsessed with chess. I'm rubbish at chess, I have to say. But I am completely nuts about chess.
Did you get to see The Queen's Gambit on Netflix?
Of course. Oh, it was wonderful, because that was I think that's the first ever time I have seen chess portrayed on TV or in film, and it's actually got it right.
Yes.
Right? The things they're talking about there, the openings which they're doing. If you're a chess nerd watching it, you're thinking, oh, that's right. They've got that right. That is exactly what it's like, or that's the position. And actually, Garry Kasparov acted as an advisor on that particular TV show. But it was a terrific TV show. And what I really loved about it was it encouraged lots of people who may not have tried chess since they were kids to give it another go. And I know it also encouraged lots of young women as well. There's far too many guys who play chess and not enough women. It's always been sort of portrayed unfairly, I think, as a boys' game, and it shouldn't be.
I thought the message was great and the production was phenomenal, and was just fiending more after that last episode.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any more of it. I think that was it. The author wrote one book, and I think he's passed away now, so there's not a sequel. But sometimes it's better to stop these things after one series. I think I saw the first series of Game of Thrones, and I thought, that's all right. I've seen that. I don't need to watch anymore. And so I quite often will watch one series, Battlestar Galactica. I think, this is good. But I kind of don't. I don't like shows which keep repeating themselves. I just want it to. Once I've got the idea, I think that's enough. So the Queen's Gambit is great.
So, outside of playing chess, what else do you do in your spare time? Or does spare time exist for you?
I edit my podcast in all of my spare time. It's an obsession. That's the thing. When you put out a podcast every single week, it becomes a bit of a hamster wheel. Well, there's not much we can do at the moment, is there? Because we're all sort of locked down. And so, I'm just going for a walk. I am a fan of retro television. So I'm rather obsessed with old Doctor Who. I'm not nice. I'm not as keen on the latest incarnation of it. I feel the writing has gone off the boil, but I like sort of 1960s black and white television is my kind of. I told you I was an old fogey, didn't I? But so I like things like that, and I'm like everyone else. I'm obsessed with the news and what's going on, and when America was going through its fascinating last 4 years or so, I was sort of obsessed with American politics, but things have calmed down there a little bit for the time being. So I'm not quite as interested in that anymore. But try and keep an eye on the world and what's going on.
Very cool. So I have to ask you then, since you've been indoors for so long, have you thought about what's next for you? What's the next mission going to be about?
Oh, my goodness. No, I should though, shouldn't I? I just, right now, I would just like to go to a restaurant with my friends. I would just like to spend some time with my friends. That would be nice. I am bubbled up with my podcast co-host. So I occasionally go round and I have dinner at hers, which has been a real blessing. And so that is about as exciting as it gets. But, I think maybe we'll come out of this. Obviously, it's been horrendously tragic and the most horrific thing has happened to the world. But for those of us who've made it through, maybe we'll appreciate the world a little bit more at the end of this, and we'll be a bit kinder to each other. That would be nice to think that we'd get some good out of this, because I think it's helped us recognize just how valuable it is to have friends and loved ones and to give each other a hug. And I'm sounding all soppy here now, Chris. Go on, you wrap up the show.
No, I love that. I love that perspective. Well, I know what's next for me. I just heard last call here at the bar, so I'm going to get one more. Do you have time for one more?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
What are we having?
So I'm having bourbon. I don't think you drink though, right?
Isn't it a bit early in the day for that? Well, I don't drink. No, I've just got a glass of sparkling water with half a lemon squeezed into it in front of me here. So it's okay. It's not. It's not for any religious or moral reason that I don't drink. I just never got the taste for it. I guess I still have a 10-year-old's taste buds, maybe, but
that's okay. That's okay. Well, you should still be able to answer this next question then. If you opened a cybersecurity themed bar, what would the name be, and what would your signature drink be called?
Why don't you warn us of things like this in advance rather than pouncing upon us in the middle of the recording?
I'll give you a minute.
Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. I'm just disappointed that I'm going to give you a totally unsatisfactory answer.
No, I don't believe that.
That's.
I don't believe that. Cybersecurity themed bar, and it could be smashing security because people get smashed at bars. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. No, I like your think. I like that you're promoting my podcast there.
Absolutely, that's a great idea. I'm a fan. And then, what would your signature drink be called? So you got to give me that too.
Oh my goodness. Oh, what do you like? I don't even know the names of any drinks. Is that a binary? Okay. A binary Bacardi? I don't know. Is that a good drink?
I like that.
Okay, all right.
I like that. I'm not even going to go as far as asking you what's in it. We'll just keep it at the name.
I wouldn't know. The whitelist whiskey? I don't know. It would. Or the far. Oh, hang on. Fireball. Is that something with fireball? Could we do something like that? Oh,
yeah,
man, Chris,
this is sauce.
I've been doing this for like 30 years, and this is the worst question ever.
Oh,
Can't you just ask me?
That's what I'm here for.
Okay. Okay. We're going to call it the Cider Cafe, right? It's a play on words. Cider.
Nice.
Right?
I like that.
The cider. You don't really like that. You're
I do like that.
Just trying to make me feel better now. And we'll have the what are the names of drinks? I don't know. To be honest, don't go to my bar because you're going to be very disappointed with the drink selection, as well as the branding of the cafe.
All right. Well, I'll have my bartender talk to you offline, and we'll hook it up.
Okay.
We'll hook it up. Okay.
All right.
Well, Graham, thanks again for taking the time out speaking with me today. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to put all the links to your podcast, your website, everything on my site. And for any reason, anyone that's not going directly to your site and comes to mine first will get redirected to your site. So,
well, that's very good of you. Well, and how many episodes of this have you done so far of the Barcode podcast?
27.
Marvelous. Is this the 27th?
This will be the 28th. Friday.
Well-known problem, the tricky 28th podcast. It's a bit like a band's second album. This could be the one where it all goes pear-shaped. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you for the positivity Graham. I appreciate it. And you take care, man. Be safe out there, and we'll talk to you soon.
Same to you. Stay secure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Barcode patrons, if you enjoyed this episode and want an easy way to support the podcast, please leave me a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. If you're not on a Mac or iPhone, just visit thebarcodepodcast.com/reviews. I appreciate all the support. Cheers.
Unfortunately, it's time to shut the bar down for this episode. Thanks for stopping in. See you next time. We'll save you a seat. Be sure to check us out at thebarcodepodcast.com.